They doubled the gravity to crush him, but the human asked for triple. In that pivotal moment, Jace Aaron defies all physical limits, shocking his captors by demanding they increase the crushing force to 6G. As the overloaded gravity systems begin to fail catastrophically, Jace turns their own weapon against them, triggering station-wide chaos that enables the resistance to free the imprisoned Gorians and expose Euraxian's heinous crimes. The Euraxian Corporation's mining vessel hovered above Gore, like a predator sizing up its prey. From his viewport, Jace Aaron watched the dead planet's swirling crimson storms with narrowed eyes. Even from orbit, the planet's abnormal gravity tugged at the ship, a constant reminder of the challenge awaiting him below. Final approach to Extraction Zone Kappa 7, announced the automated navigation system. Warning: Gore's base gravity registers at 1.4 times Earth standard. Recommend all personnel utilize gravitic compensation gear. Jace ignored the warning, continuing instead to check the seals on his mining suit. The material was worn, but meticulously maintained. Unlike the fancy corporate-issue suits the Euraxian engineers wore, his bore the scars of a dozen hostile worlds. Patches upon patches where the fabric had been repaired after encounters with caustic atmospheres or micrometeorite strikes. "Warning acknowledged," he muttered, silencing the computer. The ship's AI wasn't programmed to understand that for someone like him, a gravity veteran, Gore's pull was barely worth noting. Jace's reputation preceded him in the mining circles. They called him the Gravity Demon in the Outer Rim colonies, a nickname earned through years of working environments that would crush ordinary miners. His body had adapted to gravitational stress in ways that baffled corporate medical examiners. Some said it was due to his upbringing on Europa Station, where the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Others whispered about illegal genetic modifications. Jace never bothered to correct any theories. Reputation kept the overseers from asking too many questions. The truth was far more mundane and painful. Years of working salvage in gravity wells near collapsed stars had conditioned his body. What began as torture eventually became tolerance. And tolerance, with time and necessity, became something closer to mastery. As the ship completed its descent sequence, Jace loaded the last of his equipment into the mining pod. His fingers traced over a small, hollow projector nestled within his gear. The device activated at his touch, projecting a flickering image of a young woman with his same dark eyes and defiant jawline. "Still fighting for you, Lara," he whispered to his sister's image. "One more job and we're free." The projection showed her smiling, unaware of the recording being made. It was the last image he had of her before the Euraxian Corporation's medical intervention. The life debt they claimed hung over his family like a storm cloud. One more major extraction contract fulfilled, and her cryostasis treatment would end. The corporation would release her, debt cleared, or so they promised. Jace closed his fist, dissolving the projection. The mining pod's hatch sealed with a pressurized hiss. And for a moment, his determination wavered. Gore was notorious even among hardened miners. Its peculiar gravity wasn't just strong, it was unpredictable. Something about the planet's core created fluctuating gravitational waves that had claimed the lives of dozens of extraction teams. But Gore also contained the highest concentration of ziridium ore in the quadrant, the rare mineral that powered the warp drives of corporate flagships. For the Euraxian Corporation, that made any cost acceptable. For Jace, it represented his final chance to buy back his sister's freedom. The mining pod shuddered as it detached from the main vessel, beginning its controlled fall to the surface. Through the viewport, Jace watched as the crimson clouds of Gore's toxic atmosphere enveloped him. The pod's external sensors registered the steadily increasing gravitational pull as he descended. 1.6G, 1.7G, 1.8G. His body adjusted automatically, tensing, and relaxing muscle groups that had long learned to compensate for increased pressure. It was almost meditative, this preparation ritual before touching down on a high-gravity world. By the time the pod's landing struts touched the rust-colored surface of Gore, the local gravity reading had stabilized at 1.9 G. Not comfortable, but manageable. Jace activated the pod's environmental shield and prepared to disembark. The moment the outer hatch opened, the true weight of Gore's atmosphere pressed down on him. His specialized suit compensated partially, but he could still feel every movement requiring nearly twice the normal effort. Most miners would be shuffling along in exoframes under such conditions. Jace moved deliberately, but unassisted, each step a testament to years of conditioning. The extraction site was a vast basin of crimson dust and jagged stone formations that resembled petrified trees. According to Euraxian's geological surveys, this region had once been an alien ocean before some catastrophic event had stripped Gore of its surface water millennia ago. Now it was little more than a graveyard of mineral deposits. Extraordinarily valuable mineral deposits. Jace activated his scanner, watching as it mapped the underground ziridium veins. The readings were stronger than expected, pulsing like buried arteries beneath the planet's crust. He marked the primary extraction point and began setting up his drilling equipment. For 3 hours, he worked methodically in the punishing gravity, each movement calculated to conserve energy. The extraction proceeded without incident, almost suspiciously so. Gore's reputation for unpredictable gravitational anomalies had Jace constantly monitoring his sensors, waiting for the telltale fluctuations that would require immediate evacuation. It was during the 4th hour, as he was extracting a particularly rich vein of ore, that his equipment detected something unusual. The scanner indicated a hollow space beneath the extraction point, a cavity that didn't match any of the geological surveys. Curiosity overrode caution as Jace adjusted his drill angle. The moment the drill penetrated the cavity, his gravitational sensors spiked dramatically. 2.4 G, 2.7 G, 3.1 G. Jace staggered, his body suddenly weighing 3 times its normal mass. Even with his conditioning, the sudden change was shocking. He fought to stay upright, reaching for the emergency stabilizers on his belt. But before he could activate them, the gravity normalized as suddenly as it had spiked. His scanner was going haywire, detecting energy signatures that didn't match any natural phenomenon. With growing suspicion, Jace used his extraction tools to widen the opening to the underground cavity. What he found made his blood run cold. Embedded in the rock was a device unlike anything in standard mining catalogs. A cylindrical object emitting a faint blue pulse. It bore the unmistakable insignia of the Euraxian Corporation. "Gravitational regulator," Jace murmured, recognition dawning. "This isn't natural at all." His discovery was interrupted by the sudden wail of proximity alarms. On the horizon, a fleet of corporate security shuttles was approaching fast. Jace's hand moved instinctively to the concealed blaster at his hip, but he knew it would be useless against a full security detail. Instead, he quickly photographed the device with his scanner, transmitting the data to a secure frequency used by the outer rim resistance, a precaution he'd taken to prepare for exactly this kind of situation. The transmission had barely completed when the first security shuttle touched down less than 50 meters from his position. Armed guards in Euraxian black emerged, their exoframes allowing them to move effortlessly in Gore's gravity. Leading them was a tall, broad-shouldered figure whose armor bore the insignia of a security captain. The helmet retracted, revealing a pale face with cybernetic implants along the jawline. "Jace Aaron," the captain's voice carried across the distance. "I am Security Captain Sorn Vac. You are in violation of Section 7.3 of your extraction contract. Unauthorized exploration of non-designated areas." Jace straightened, hiding his concern behind a mask of indifference. "Just following the vein, Captain. That's what you're paying me for." Sornvak's augmented eyes narrowed. Our sensors detected unauthorized transmission signals from your position. Corporate protocol dictates immediate quarantine and investigation. Before Jace could respond, the guards surrounded him, weapons raised. One of them approached with restraints designed to neutralize even the strongest mining exoframes. "I'm not wearing an exo," Jace stated flatly. The guard hesitated, clearly surprised. Captain Vok stepped forward, studying Jace with new interest. "So the rumors about the gravity demon are true," he mused. "All the more reason for caution. Take him to the testing chamber on the orbital station. Director Kresh will want to interview this one personally." As the guards led him toward their shuttle, Jace caught a final glimpse of the gravity regulator in the cavity. Something wasn't adding up. Gore was supposed to be an uninhabited dead world, yet the corporation had installed hidden technology to artificially manipulate its gravity. The question was, why? The answer, Jace suspected, was connected to the real reason he had come to Gore, a reason far more important than Zeridium ore. The security shuttle ascended through Gore's crimson atmosphere, its compensators struggling against the planet's pull. Inside, Jace sat in silence, wrists bound by restraints that would have immobilized an ordinary human. For him, they were merely uncomfortable. Captain Vok sat across from him, studying him with clinical interest. "Most miners would be collapsed on the floor of Gore without an exoframe," he remarked. "Yet, here you are, moving unassisted in nearly 2G conditions. Care to explain?" Jace maintained his silence, eyes fixed on the viewport as the crimson clouds gave way to the blackness of space. The orbital station grew larger as they approached, a massive ring-shaped structure with the distinctive asymmetrical additions that marked Euraxian architecture. "Your file makes for interesting reading. Aaron," Vok continued, undeterred by Jace's silence. "Former salvage specialist for the Kronos Collective. Survivor of the Deimos Station collapse. A gravity well incident that killed everyone else. And now, one of our most productive independent contractors." He leaned forward. "But your file doesn't explain what you were really looking for on Gore." Jace's eyes shifted to meet Vak's. "Just doing the job you hired me for." "We both know that's not true," Vok replied coolly. "Independent miners don't transmit data on secure frequencies. They don't accidentally discover hidden corporate infrastructure, and they certainly don't have connections to known resistance cells in the outer rim." The shuttle docked with the station, the artificial gravity normalizing as they crossed the airlock threshold. Jace felt the familiar sensation of weight, adjusting, his body automatically compensating for the change. Guards flanked him as they moved through the station's sterile corridors. Technicians and corporate officials stepped aside, watching with undisguised curiosity as the procession passed. Jace noted the station layout, mentally mapping potential escape routes, an old habit from his days in the Resistance. They arrived at a section marked Research Division, authorized personnel only. The doors parted to reveal a large chamber dominated by a circular platform surrounded by monitoring equipment. Engineers in Euraxian white moved among the consoles, adjusting settings and monitoring readouts. At the center of the activity stood a slender woman with silver-streaked hair, pulled into a tight bun. Her white uniform bore the insignia of a chief engineer, and her expression, as she turned to regard the new arrivals, was one of scientific curiosity rather than hostility. "Captain Vok," she acknowledged. "This is the subject. Chief Engineer Miratel." Vok introduced her to Jace with a curt nod. "The director has authorized full testing protocols." Mira approached Jace, studying him with the detached interest of someone examining an unusual specimen. "Remarkable," she murmured. "No visible augmentations, yet he functions in high-gravity environments." She directed her next words to Jace. "Do you understand what this chamber is?" Jace glanced around, recognition dawning. "Gravitational testing facility. You use it to stress test equipment before planetary deployment." Very good, Mira nodded, seemingly pleased. But we also use it for personnel evaluation. The platform can simulate gravitational conditions from 0.1 g to 6 g with precise control. A thin smile crossed her face. Today, it will help us understand exactly what you are capable of and what you were really doing on Gore. Captain Vac gestured to the guards. Place him on the platform. Remove the restraints. As the guards complied, Jace remained passive, conserving energy for what was to come. Standing on the platform, he felt the subtle vibration of the gravity generators beneath his feet. Vac took position at the main control console. Let's start with something simple. 2G conditions, double Earth standard gravity. With the press of a button, the invisible force pressed down on Jace. His body, already accustomed to Gore's 1.9 g, adjusted quickly to the additional pressure. His posture shifted slightly, muscles tensing to support his doubled weight. But he remained standing tall. Around the chamber, engineers murmured in surprise. Most subjects would be visibly struggling under such conditions without assistance. Mira Tal approached the platform's edge, fascination evident in her expression. Extraordinary adaptation, no signs of distress. She turned to a console, checking biometric readings. Heart rate elevated only 12%. Respiration normal. Captain, I believe we should increase the intensity. Vac's eyes narrowed. 2.5 g. The pressure increased. Jace felt the additional weight pressing down on every part of his body. Moving now required conscious effort, but he deliberately rolled his shoulders and took a step forward, demonstrating his continued mobility. This is getting boring, he taunted, his voice slightly strained but clear. I thought Euraxian technology was supposed to be impressive. The captain's expression hardened. 3G. The invisible force intensified. 3 times Earth's gravity now bore down on Jace. Sweat beaded on his forehead as his body fought against the crushing pressure. Each breath required deliberate effort, his chest straining against the weight of the air itself. Most humans would be forced to their knees at this point, unable to remain standing as their bodies effectively tripled in weight. Military-grade exoframes were rated for sustained operation at 3G, and even those had limited duration. Jace remained upright. His legs trembled slightly, and his movements became more labored. But he stood defiant on the platform. Years of working in fluctuating gravity wells had prepared his body for this moment. There was pain. Certainly, his joints screamed in protest, and his vertebrae felt compressed to their limits. But pain was an old companion. Impossible, one of the engineers muttered. No unaugmented human should be able to function at this level. Mira Tal's expression had shifted from scientific curiosity to something closer to concern. Captain, these readings don't make sense. His muscle density and bone structure are showing adaptations that would take generations of high-gravity evolution. Vac ignored her, his attention fixed solely on Jace. What were you really doing on Gore? Who sent you? Jace managed a strained smile. Just a miner doing his job. Increase to 3.5 g, Vac ordered. Mira stepped forward. Captain, I must protest. We don't know the physical limitations. Increase it, Vac snapped. The pressure mounted, at 3.5 g. Jace finally dropped to one knee, his body hunching forward as the crushing force threatened to flatten him against the platform. Blood pounded in his ears, and his vision blurred at the edges. But still, he fought to remain conscious, to maintain some semblance of control. Through gritted teeth, he spoke. I've seen what you're hiding on Gore. Vac's expression flickered with momentary uncertainty. What are you talking about? The gravity regulators, Jace managed. Each word a struggle against the oppressive force. Artificial manipulation of the entire planet's gravitational field. A hush fell over the chamber. The engineers exchanged glances, and Mira Tal's face drained of color. You've been Poisoning them, Jace continued, his voice gaining strength despite the crushing pressure. The native population, you said was extinct, using gravity, to keep them underground. Captain Vax's composure cracked. 4G, he shouted. Now! The force slammed into Jace like a physical blow. At 4 times Earth gravity, even his conditioned body reached its limits. He collapsed fully to the platform, chest pressed against the surface, fighting for each shallow breath. Black spots danced across his vision as the blood struggled to reach his brain against the overwhelming pressure. But even as his body failed him, his mind remained clear. This reaction, this panic from Vok, confirmed what had only been suspicion before. The underground chambers, the gravity regulators, the toxic atmosphere that wasn't naturally occurring. It all pointed to a massive corporate cover-up. From his position on the platform, Jace's eyes found Miratal. The chief engineer was staring at him with a mixture of scientific amazement and growing moral discomfort. She knew. They all knew. "Captain," she finally spoke, her voice cutting through the tension. "The platform is showing structural stress. These levels weren't designed for extended testing." "I don't care," Vok replied, his earlier composure completely abandoned. 5G. I want to see what breaks first, him or the machine. As the gravity increased to 5 times Earth standard, Jace felt as though a small shuttle was parked on his chest. Breathing became nearly impossible. Each small intake of air, a monumental struggle. His ribs creaked under the pressure, threatening to snap. Blood vessels in his eyes began to rupture, turning his vision crimson. Yet, somehow, through the haze of agony and impending unconsciousness, Jace managed to speak one final time. His words were barely audible, a rasping whisper that nonetheless carried through the silent chamber. "Triple it." Confusion crossed Vok's face. "What?" With superhuman effort, Jace turned his head just enough to lock eyes with the captain. Blood trickled from his nose and the corners of his mouth as he repeated, "Triple, the gravity, 6G, do it." "He's delirious," one of the engineers muttered. But Miratal moved closer to the platform, scientific curiosity overriding caution. "He's challenging you, Captain. But the system isn't designed for extended operation above 5G. The structural integrity—" "He wants 6G?" Vok's voice was tight with barely controlled rage. "Fine. Let's see what a human looks like as a puddle." His hand moved to the controls. 6G. Maximum intensity. The chamber's lighting dimmed as the gravity generators drew enormous power. Warning alarms began to sound throughout the facility, indicating dangerous system overload. The platform itself groaned under the strain, structural supports beginning to buckle. 6 times Earth's gravity pressed down upon Jace Aaron. No unaugmented human had ever survived such conditions for more than a few seconds. His consciousness began to fade, darkness creeping in from the edges of his vision. But in those critical moments, as the gravity generators reached their maximum output, something unexpected happened. The overloaded system created a momentary gravitational pulse, a ripple in the artificial field that propagated throughout the chamber. The pulse triggered a cascade of emergency protocols within the station's systems. Security locks disengaged automatically as the station's AI detected potentially catastrophic system failures. Containment fields across multiple sections flickered and failed. And in the chaos that followed, no one noticed the small device that Jace had managed to activate just before collapsing. A compact signal booster hidden within the sole of his boot, now broadcasting on resistance frequencies. As alarms blared throughout the station, Jace Aaron lay motionless on the gravitational platform, his gambit set in motion. What appeared to be a suicidal challenge was, in fact, the first move in a game with stakes higher than anyone in the Euraxian Corporation could possibly imagine. The resistance was coming, and with them, the truth about Gore would finally emerge. In the chaos that erupted within the testing chamber, Captain Vax's attention was torn between the alarms blaring from every console and the seemingly broken man on the platform. The gravitational field fluctuated wildly, spiking to nearly 6.5 G, before suddenly dropping to 3 G, then 2 G, as emergency systems fought to stabilize the overloaded generators. "Shut it down!" Miratal shouted over the cacophony, her fingers flying across the emergency controls. "The whole system is going critical!" Engineers scrambled to contain the damage, but the gravitational pulse had already triggered a station-wide security protocol. Throughout the orbital facility, doors locked and unlocked in random sequences as the central computer attempted to isolate the threat. Vac staggered toward the main console, fighting against the fluctuating gravity. "Override code Yorax 9 Delta. Lock down all sections." But his command came too late. The gravity platform, subjected to forces beyond its design parameters, emitted a high-pitched whine as critical components began to fail. Stress fractures appeared across its surface, spreading like lightning through the metal. In that moment of supreme chaos, something impossible happened. Jace Aaron moved. Despite the crushing pressure that should have rendered him unconscious, if not dead, his fingers twitched, then curled into a fist. His eyes, bloodshot and filled with ruptured vessels, opened to narrow slits, and as the platform beneath him began to break apart, he somehow pushed himself up onto his hands and knees. The few engineers still focused on their monitors, rather than fleeing, stared in disbelief. The biometric readings made no sense, heart rate accelerating rather than failing, muscle activity increasing despite cellular damage indicators. What is he?" one of them whispered. Miratal alone seemed to grasp what was happening. "The gravitational fluctuations," she realized aloud. "He's using the rhythm of the pulses, timing his movements with the momentary drops in intensity." Indeed. Jace had developed a technique during years of working near unstable gravity wells, a method of sensing and exploiting the microsecond variations that occurred in artificial fields. Where others saw crushing, constant pressure, he perceived patterns, waves that could be navigated by someone with enough experience and sheer stubborn will. As the platform finally gave way with a deafening crack, the gravity field collapsed entirely. The sudden return to normal conditions sent everyone in the chamber stumbling, everyone except Jace, who had been anticipating precisely this moment. He launched himself forward with surprising speed, his body momentarily liberated from the extreme pressure. Before anyone could react, he had reached Captain Vac, who was still struggling to regain his balance. With one fluid motion, Jace stripped the security officer of his sidearm. "Nobody moves," he rasped, voice hoarse but steady. Blood still trickled from his nose and ears, his face a mask of determination rather than pain. "Chief Engineer Tal, shut down all remaining gravitational systems on this station, now." Mira hesitated only briefly before complying, her scientific mind clearly processing the implications of what she had just witnessed. "Extraordinary," she murmured as she worked the controls. "You've developed some form of gravitational adaptation I have never seen documented." "Not adaptation," Jace corrected, keeping the weapon trained on Vac. "Anticipation. There are patterns in the chaos if you've been crushed enough times to notice them." Throughout the station, alarms continued to sound as systems failed in cascading sequence. The distant sounds of commotion echoed through the corridors. Shouts, running footsteps, occasional bursts of weapons fire. Captain Vac's cybernetic eyes narrowed. "You planned this. The transmission from the surface wasn't random." Jace allowed himself a pained smile. "I've been planning this for 3 years, Captain. Ever since I learned what Euraxian Corporation was really doing on Gore." He addressed the room at large. "Your corporation discovered an indigenous population living underground. Intelligent beings adapted to the planet's natural gravitational cycles. But instead of reporting the discovery as interstellar law requires, You installed gravity regulators to manipulate their environment, forcing them deeper underground so you could extract the Zeridium without interference. Preposterous, Vox scoffed, though a flicker of unease crossed his face. Gore is a dead world. Our surveys confirmed. Your surveys were falsified. Jace cut him off. And I have proof. The transmission I sent from the surface went to resistance contacts, who have been gathering evidence of Euraxian's violations for years. This station's primary containment level holds native Gorians, test subjects for your gravity experiments. Miratal froze at her console, her expression shifting from scientific detachment to horror. The restricted biological research wing? Those aren't non-sentient specimens? Ask your captain, Jace suggested coldly. Before Vok could respond, the chamber's main doors slid open. A squad of armed figures rushed in, not Euraxian security, but a diverse group wearing the mismatched gear typical of Outer Rim operatives. Leading them was a tall woman with dark skin and a shock of white hair, her weathered face creased in a grim smile. Commander Nix, Jace acknowledged, relief evident in his voice. Perfect timing as always. You look terrible. Aaron, she replied, quickly assessing the situation. Signal came through loud and clear. The distraction worked. We've secured the lower levels and found the containment cells. Her expression hardened as she turned to Captain Vok. 17 Gorian natives, subjected to experimental gravitational torture. Plus, another 30 human prisoners, miners who discovered too much. The revelation sent a ripple of shock through the engineers still present. Miratal's face had gone ashen, her hands trembling slightly above the controls. I didn't know, she whispered. The biological research was classified. We were told it was agricultural testing for potential colonization. Convenient ignorance, Commander Nix said coldly, then nodded to her team. Secure these corporate lackeys. The evidence transmission is already broadcasting to the Interstellar Regulatory Commission. Transport ships are inbound for the Gorians and other prisoners. As the resistance fighters moved to comply, Jace kept his attention fixed on Captain Vok. The security officer's earlier arrogance had given way to calculating silence. Where is my sister? Jace demanded. Lara Aaron. She was transferred to this station 3 months ago, supposedly for continued treatment of her fabricated medical condition. Vak's expression remained impassive. I don't know every patient in the medical wing. He's lying, Miratal interjected unexpectedly. All eyes turned to her as she stepped forward. Lara Aaron is in cryostasis in the executive medical facility. I reviewed her case file personally when it was flagged for special handling. There's nothing wrong with her, never was. The corporation was keeping her as leverage. Jace's grip on the weapon tightened. Take me to her. Now. As several resistance fighters escorted Jace, Mira, and the captive Vak through the station's corridors, the full extent of the chaos became apparent. Throughout the facility, liberated prisoners, both human and alien, were being guided toward transport vessels. Corporate personnel were being detained or, in some cases, assisting the resistance forces after learning the truth about their employers' activities. The executive medical facility was a stark contrast to the utilitarian design of the rest of the station. Plush furnishings and artistic installations created an atmosphere of luxury that seemed obscenely out of place given the circumstances. At the center of the main chamber stood 12 cryostasis pods, their transparent surfaces revealing the sleeping occupants within. Jace moved immediately to the third pod, where a young woman floated in suspended animation. Despite the tubes and monitoring equipment connected to her, the family resemblance was unmistakable. The same determined jawline, the same dark hair. Lara, he whispered, placing his hand against the cold surface of the pod. Miratal moved to the control console. I can begin revival procedures. The sedation was light. She should regain consciousness within minutes. As the chief engineer worked, Commander Nix approached Jace. We found the documents you predicted in the director's private database. proof of systematic rights violations on 17 different worlds. Not just gore. The Euraxian Corporation has been using gravitational manipulation as a weapon against indigenous populations throughout the sector. Jace nodded, his attention still fixed on his sister's pod as the cryostasis field began to dissipate. It was never about the mining. The Zeridium extraction was just a cover for their real work, developing gravitational weapons for military applications. The indigenous populations were test subjects. Captain Vac, still restrained and guarded by resistance fighters, broke his silence with a harsh laugh. You think exposing one research station changes anything? The corporation has facilities throughout controlled space. The demand for gravitational control technology is too great. Governments, militaries, colonization corps, they'll pay any price. Maybe, Jace conceded, finally turning to face him. But they'll be doing it under interstellar scrutiny now, and the Gorians will have a chance to reclaim their world. The cryostasis pod emitted a soft chime as the revival cycle completed. The transparent cover retracted, and Lara Aaron took her first unassisted breath in over 3 years. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to recognition as she focused on her brother's face. Jace, her voice was weak from disuse. Is it really you? It's me, little sister, he confirmed, helping her sit up. You're safe now. The debt is canceled, permanently. As Lara oriented herself to her surroundings, her gaze sharpened with the same intelligence that characterized her brother. You found proof, didn't you? About the Gorians? Jace's surprise must have shown on his face, because Lara gave a weak smile. Why do you think they put me here? I was cataloging atmospheric samples for the terraforming division when I noticed the anomalies. Gravity fluctuations that didn't match natural patterns. Evidence of artificial manipulation. She coughed, her body still adjusting to normal function. When I reported it, they diagnosed me with environmental psychosis and put me in suspension. Commander Nix stepped forward. Your findings will be critical testimony for the Interstellar Commission hearings. If you're willing. Lara nodded firmly, already attempting to stand despite her weakened state. More than willing. I've spent 3 years dreaming about justice for what I saw. A sudden explosion rocked the station, the distant boom followed by a momentary flicker in the lighting. Commander Nix's communication device activated with an urgent signal. Nix here, report. Corporate reinforcements, came the strained reply. Euraxian security cruiser just docked at the emergency airlock. They're attempting to secure the command center and data cores. Nix cursed under her breath. We need more time to complete the evacuation and secure the evidence. She turned to Jace. We could use your unique talents right now. Aaron. Despite his battered condition, Jace straightened. What did you have in mind? The main gravitational control hub, Miratal interjected unexpectedly. All eyes turned to her as she continued. If we can reach it, we could create a controlled gravitational pulse throughout specific sections of the station, strong enough to incapacitate the corporate forces without endangering the evacuees. And you'd help us do this? Nix asked skeptically. Mira's expression hardened with newfound resolve. I've spent my career advancing gravitational science for what I believed was human progress. Instead, my work has been used to torture and subjugate. Yes, Commander. I will help you. Captain Vac lunged forward suddenly, despite his restraints. Traitor! The corporation will hunt you down like all the others. Mira regarded him coolly. I'd rather be hunted as a scientist with integrity than live comfortably as a monster's accomplice. Decision made. A small team quickly formed. Jace, Commander Nix, Miratal, and 2 resistance fighters. Lara insisted on accompanying them despite her brother's protests. I've been asleep for 3 years while you fought this battle alone, she argued. I'm not missing the finale. The journey to the gravitational control hub took them through increasingly contested sections of the station. Evidence of firefights, scorched walls, abandoned weapons, occasional casualties, marked their path. Twice, they were forced to detour around corporate security checkpoints. When they finally reached the hub, they found it surprisingly unguarded, a testament to the chaos spreading throughout the station. The circular chamber was dominated by a central holographic projection of the entire facility, gravitational fields represented by varying colors of light. Mira immediately went to work at the main console, her fingers flying across the controls with practiced precision. The system is in emergency lockdown following the testing chamber overload. I need to bypass safety protocols to regain control. Jace joined her, his experience with gravitational systems providing useful insight despite his lack of formal training. Together, they worked to re-establish control over the station's gravity network. Corporate forces have reached level 7, one of the resistance fighters reported, monitoring security feeds. They're moving toward the prisoner evacuation routes. We need more time, Mira muttered, frustration evident as another override attempt failed. The system keeps rejecting the commands. Because you're trying to be too gentle, Jace observed. He reached past her, inputting a different sequence. Don't try to finesse it, overload it, like we did in the testing chamber. Mira's eyes widened. That could damage the entire station's structural integrity. We don't need the entire station, Jace countered. Just sections 8 through 12, where their forces are concentrated. Understanding dawned on the engineer's face. A controlled burnout of those gravitational systems? It could work. As they refined the approach, Commander Nix coordinated with evacuation teams, ensuring all friendlies would be clear of the affected areas. Lara, drawing on her scientific background, helped calculate the necessary power distribution to achieve the desired effect without catastrophic failure. Corporate forces breaching level 8, the lookout warned. We have maybe 5 minutes before they reach us. That's all we need, Jace replied grimly, making final adjustments to the plan. He turned to his sister. Ready to see what happens when gravity bites back? Lara managed a determined smile. After 3 years in suspension, I'm ready for anything. With a nod to Mira, Jace initiated the sequence. The holographic display flared as power surged through the gravitational systems in the targeted sections. Warning indicators blazed across the console, but Mira expertly managed the flow, preventing a total system collapse. On the security feeds, they watched as the Euraxian security forces suddenly staggered and fell. The localized gravitational field had spiked to 4G, then 5G, enough to incapacitate even augmented corporate soldiers without causing permanent harm to the station's structure. It's working, Lara exclaimed. But their victory was short-lived. The main door to the control hub slid open, revealing Director Kresh himself, a tall, gaunt figure, flanked by 4 elite security officers in advanced exoframes. Impressive improvisation, the director remarked coldly, his voice carrying the artificial precision of extensive vocal enhancements. But ultimately futile. The security officers raised their weapons, but before they could fire, a new alarm sounded throughout the station, different from the previous warnings. The holographic display shifted automatically, showing a massive vessel emerging from hyperspace near the station. Interstellar Regulatory Commission Enforcement Cruiser, Commander Nix identified, unable to keep the triumph from her voice. Right on schedule. Director Kresh's composed expression faltered. Impossible. The Commission has no jurisdiction in this sector. They do when evidence of Class 1 biological rights violations is transmitted across all emergency channels, Jace countered, which happened approximately 40 minutes ago, thanks to your overzealous gravity test. As if to confirm his words, the station-wide communication system activated with an authoritative message. Attention Euraxian Station Gore 1. This is Commissioner Alara Way of the Interstellar Regulatory Commission. Your facility is now under Commission authority, pending investigation of multiple violations of the Sentient Rights Accord. All personnel are ordered to stand down immediately. The effect on Kresh's security team was immediate. uncertainty replacing their earlier confidence. The director himself seemed to age before their eyes, his artificial composure crumbling. "The corporation will disavow all knowledge of these operations," he said quietly. "I will be the scapegoat. They'll sacrifice this entire station to protect the board. Then, perhaps you should consider what information might be valuable to the commission," Mira suggested, her voice cool but not unsympathetic. "Names, locations of other facilities, evidence that might otherwise be destroyed." A tense silence followed, as Director Kresh visibly calculated his options. Finally, he signaled his security team to lower their weapons. "I've devoted 40 years to the advancement of gravitational science," he said, his enhanced voice carrying a hint of genuine regret. "I told myself the benefits would ultimately outweigh the ethical compromises." He looked directly at Jace. "I was wrong." As Commission forces secured the station and began formal proceedings against the Euraxian personnel, Jace and Lara found a moment of quiet in an observation lounge overlooking Gore. The planet's crimson storms seemed less threatening now, more like a protective cloak for the civilization hidden beneath. The Commission investigators found 17 more gravity regulators across the planet's surface, Lara informed him, reviewing reports on a datapad. "Once they're deactivated, the natural gravitational cycles should resume. The Gorians can reclaim their surface territory within a generation." Jace nodded, a weight lifting from his shoulders that had nothing to do with gravitational forces. "And the corporation? Facing unprecedented sanctions, stock value plummeting, board members resigning." She set the datapad aside. "But you know, they're not the only ones. There are other corporations, other worlds. Which is why our work isn't finished," Commander Nix interrupted, entering the lounge with Miratal. The resistance leader looked tired but satisfied. "The Commission has offered official protection status to all whistleblowers involved in exposing the Gore situation." Mira stepped forward, her earlier professional detachment replaced by passionate intensity. "I've provided them with technical specifications for all Euraxian gravitational technology. Knowledge that could be used to help rather than harm, if applied correctly. And I've accepted a position as scientific liaison to the Gorian recovery effort," Lara added. "Someone needs to ensure their civilization can adapt to the changing conditions as the regulators are removed." Jace looked between the three women, his sister, the scientist, the resistance commander, and the reformed corporate engineer, feeling a sense of purpose stronger than any he'd known during his years of solitary struggle. "What about you, brother?" Lara asked. "The gravity demon is something of a celebrity now. The Commission has offered you a consultant position." Jace turned back to the viewport, gazing at the planet that had nearly killed him, but had ultimately set him free. "I think I'll stick with the Resistance for a while. There are more worlds like Gore out there, more corporations like Euraxian." A smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. "Besides, I've developed a certain tolerance for impossible pressure." 3 months later, a small vessel approached the newly established Gorian embassy station in neutral space. Inside, Jace Aaron watched as representatives from 17 planetary systems convened to sign the Gravitational Rights Accord, a new treaty establishing strict regulations on the development and application of gravity-altering technology. Among the delegates were several Gorian elders, their naturally stocky forms and iridescent skin adapted to a life of fluctuating gravitational conditions. They moved with grace, despite the station's standard gravity, a testament to the same adaptability that had allowed them to survive Euraxian's manipulation. Lara stood beside her brother, now an official scientific advisor to the Gorian delegation. "They're considering terraforming parts of Europa Station for a cultural exchange program," she informed him. "Apparently, the variable gravity there is quite comfortable for them." Jace nodded, feeling a sense of completion. What had begun as a desperate mission to save his sister had evolved into something far greater, the liberation of an entire civilization, and the beginning of meaningful reform throughout the sector. As the Gorian ambassador rose to address the assembly, her translated words resonated with profound meaning. For generations, we adapted to the natural rhythms of our world's gravitational tides. When those rhythms were artificially manipulated, we faced extinction. But adaptation is our strength, as it is for all who survive in the harshest environments. The ambassador turned toward where Jay stood at the back of the chamber, acknowledging him with a respectful gesture. We have learned that pressure reveals truth, in planets, in civilizations, and in individuals. Those who attempt to use gravity as a weapon eventually find themselves crushed by the weight of their own ambitions. Those who respect its power find balance, even in the most extreme conditions. Later, as the delegates dispersed to continue negotiations, Jace found himself alone at an observation port, watching as ships from across the sector orbited the neutral station. Among them was a vessel bearing the insignia of the Outer Rim Resistance, now operating with the tacit approval of the Interstellar Commission as investigators of corporate malfeasance. Commander Nix joined him, her customary stern expression softened by satisfaction. The Euraxian Corporation's remaining board members were indicted this morning. With Director Kresh's testimony, the case is airtight. And the other corporations? Jace asked, scrambling to ensure they're not next. Several have voluntarily disclosed gravitational research programs for commission oversight. She gave him a sidelong glance. Your reputation has spread. You know, the man who asked for triple gravity and lived. It's become something of a rallying cry for those standing against corporate oppression. Jace grimaced. Not exactly how I plan to make my mark on the universe. Few of us end up where we expect, Nix replied philosophically. Speaking of which, I have a new assignment, if you're interested. Unusual gravitational readings on a mining colony in the Ceres belt. Could be natural phenomena. Or another corporation testing boundaries? Jace finished. He straightened, feeling the familiar determination settle into his bones. When do we leave? The Resistance commander smiled. I thought you might say that. We depart at 0600 tomorrow. She handed him a data chip. All the details. Your sister already has a copy. She insisted on joining the scientific team. As Nix departed, Jace inserted the chip into his personal device, reviewing the preliminary data. The gravitational anomalies were subtle but distinctive, artificial manipulation disguised as natural phenomena. Someone had learned from Euraxian's mistakes, creating a more sophisticated cover. But they hadn't counted on facing someone who had survived the crushing pressure of corporate greed and emerged stronger. Someone who understood that true strength came not from exerting force, but from enduring it. Jace Aaron, the gravity demon, the man who asked for triple, closed the file and gazed out at the stars. Somewhere out there, another world needed liberation, another truth needed uncovering, and he was ready for the pressure. After all, what was gravity but another force to be understood, respected, and ultimately overcome?